Hi. Okay. What's that? Okay, so today I'm going to be talking about FODMAPs, and here we go. So let's start with what the heck is a FODMAP? A FODMAP stands for fermentable, which means they create gas. And then the O, D, M, and P are different types of carbohydrates. FODMAPs are sugars and fibers, and they're very small. And as such, they're fast food for our gut bacteria. And in individuals with a sensitive intestine, such as those with irritable bowel syndrome, FODMAPs can really trigger GI distress. So, the gluten-free diet has really taken the baking industry and really society by storm. However, the evidence shows that really only 1% of the population has celiac disease, which requires a gluten-free diet. On the other hand, irritable bowel syndrome impacts 1 in 5 Americans. About 45 million Americans are impacted by irritable bowel syndrome. And irritable bowel syndrome can be quite debilitating. In one study, they asked IBS patients if they were to get a treatment that would give them symptom relief, how much of their life would they be willing to give up? 25% of their remaining life to get a symptom, a treatment that would benefit symptoms. So it's really quite debilitating. And the low FODMAP diet is effective in managing these symptoms in about 50 to 75% of people with IBS. So you are going to be hearing about the low FODMAP diet. It's definitely emerging in the US and abroad. The diet started at Monash University in Melbourne, Australia. And in Australia, there's low FODMAP cafes. There's many low FODMAP food companies. And so we're just starting to see this percolate in the US. Campbell's Soup Company, Kellogg's, Enjoy Life Foods, a number of food companies in the US have low FODMAP certified foods. So you're going to be seeing more and more of this. But it's a 3-phase diet. So this is a diet where an individual with IBS would eliminate all high FODMAP foods for about 2 to 4 weeks. And then they would systematically reintroduce FODMAPs with the guidance of a registered dietitian to really determine their individual triggers, because FODMAPs are, you'll see in a moment, are in a wide range of foods, and there's different types of FODMAPs, and not everyone will be triggered by the same type of FODMAP. We're all a little bit different because we all have different gut bacteria, and we all have sort of different presentations with IBS. So food intolerance in general occurs in about 20% of people, so it's quite common. There's carbohydrate intolerance, which would involve lactose. We've all heard of lactose intolerance. Fructose is sort of a newer kid on the block, but fructose can also cause intolerance. It's common in many fruits. And then FODMAP intolerance. Protein-based intolerance is where we would find gluten. So FODMAPs, again, are carbohydrates, sugars and fibers, commonly malabsorbed, that can trigger symptoms. And we're definitely going to see this, like I said, as the next big thing. But food intolerance can contribute anything from intestinal GI distress, gas, bloating, pain, to extra-intestinal manifestations such as brain fog. So just in short, this is sort of a depiction that I use with my clients. This is a handout I have on my website at katescarlata.com. And it basically just shows you that these small carbohydrates are osmotic, and that means they pull water into the intestine and they stretch the gut. And that can cause symptoms of cramping, diarrhea, and distension, bloating. They also are very small. When we think of, for instance, many fibers in the diet are very long-chain carbohydrates. FODMAPs are very small, so fast food, they can get to these fibers and eat them rapidly and create a lot of gas. So it can feel like a hot air balloon ready for takeoff inside your gut. And FODMAP effects are cumulative, and this is where it becomes a little tricky sometimes for patients on their own to navigate the diet. They may have milk one day, no GI problems. They may have wheat one day, no GI problems. But then they have wheat and milk together, and they feel crampy and bloating. So often patients can have wheat on the low FODMAP diet, but maybe not with other FODMAPs at the same meal. Or they can have a little bit of watermelon, but not several slices of watermelon in one sitting. So this is a depiction of the foods that are high in FODMAPs by the various subtypes. Now I told you the acronym, which was FODMAPs, is oligosaccharides, disaccharides. These are all chemical terms for different kinds of sugars and fibers. But then we break it down into food. So the D in FODMAP is lactose. It's a disaccharide, and that's commonly found in things like milk and ice cream and traditional yogurt. Excess fructose is the M in FODMAP. It's a monosaccharide, meaning it's a one-chain sugar. It is the most likely to draw in water into the intestine because it's the smallest of FODMAPs. The smaller the FODMAP, the more water gets pulled in. So foods like apples and figs and mango, pears, watermelon, sugar snap peas, honey, agave syrup are high in this excess fructose, which is a FODMAP for some people. The sugar alcohols, or P or polyols in FODMAP, come from stone fruits, cauliflower, and also sugar alcohols that may be added in like a sugar-free gum and mint or traditional sugar-free sweeteners. And then fructans are found commonly in onion and garlic, and this is where we would find wheat, barley, and rye as well. Low FODMAP diet is a food intolerance-based application. This is not an allergy. It's actually, in a way, simpler to apply this diet because small amounts of wheat are not problematic for individuals. It's really when they're having a lot of it and all at one time, depending on their personal sensitivities. I also want you to see this list. These are all, for the most part, very healthy foods. The low FODMAP diet is an application we would use with individuals with irritable bowel syndrome. Again, this is a group that's 15 to 20% of the population. The other 80 to 85% of Americans should be eating FODMAPs. They're not bad for us. They're food for that bacteria, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. But there is this other group that is quite significant, 1 in 5 Americans, where they really can make their life miserable. This list I realize you cannot see, but I put it up just to show you. This is all the low FODMAP foods. So we're talking about low FODMAP grains. We have millet, corn, oats, sorghum, and rice. So there's a number of FODMAP grains that are suitable. And again, the wheat, barley, and rye are portion driven. So some people can do some wheat, some people cannot do some wheat. It really depends on the individual and their food sensitivities. We want patients to be eating grains and fiber. Fiber is good for gut health. It's just that we need to swap out various grains to help individuals meet their fiber needs. There's some interesting low FODMAP innovations happening. This is a low FODMAP innovation where they have created a flour blend using gluten and a wheat starch, which is not a FODMAP, that's a long-chain carbohydrate, to provide really interesting texture to baked goods. So this is another area of industry that's occurring, and there's a lot of gluten-free flour blends that work perfect for low FODMAP diet followers, and then there's these new innovations that really do result in a little bit of a better textured product. So it's something else to consider if this is of interest to you in the baking arena. Sourdough bread also tends to be lower in FODMAP, so this is an interesting concept. When there's a slow fermentation or long fermentation, the culture actually, the bacteria and the yeast will eat the fructans, the oligosaccharides, the O in FODMAP, and reduce it to levels that are tolerable for many people. This depends really on the type of bacteria, the type of yeast that are in the culture. So breads may vary from bread to bread, but the key here is that they're not rapidly fermented. You're not adding a baker's yeast. This is a slow ferment, long ferment bread that tends to be better tolerated. It does reduce the gluten in the bread as well. It does not make the bread gluten-free, but tends to reduce the FODMAP content to an acceptable level for patients to tolerate. And again, sourdough bread is delicious and tends to be a little bit more favorable for taste and flavor than going for a gluten-free variety, which would be another option for these individuals. This is a busy slide, and so I'll just kind of go through it briefly. There's a lot of baking hacks to lower the FODMAP content. Obviously, if you're, instead of using wheat, rye, and barley, or if you are using them, use a sourdough preparation. You can instead use gluten-free blends, millet, sorghum flour, tapioca starch, corn flour. There's a number of suitable flour blends that you could use in baking. If you were using or wanted to incorporate fruits, it's just swapping out some of the high FODMAP fruits like apples and pears and watermelon for strawberries, blueberries, pineapple, kiwi fruit, passion fruit. There's a number of low FODMAP. There's a ton of low FODMAP fruits that are suitable. Nuts and nut flours tend to be, it can be a little bit high in FODMAPs because nuts do have some fibers that fall in the FODMAP category, but really it's the cashews and pistachio nuts that are particularly high. Nuts like walnuts and almonds, macadamia nuts, chia seeds, sunflower seeds, pepitas. Those are all great ways to add fiber, healthy fats, magnesium to individuals' diets that may be reducing their cashew and pistachio intake. I can tell you I'm FODMAP sensitive, and pistachios and cashews I love, and they hate me. For fats, FODMAPs are carbohydrates, so fats are not a problem. And one of the things, garlic and onion are FODMAPs. They're in the fructan family, or the O in FODMAP. They're common triggers. I would say onion is probably the most common trigger of all the FODMAP family. But you can use onion and garlic in preparation if you use a garlic infused oil. FODMAPs are water soluble, so you can take the garlic, get that beautiful garlic infused oil. The FODMAPs will not leach in the oil. You remove the garlic flesh and use that tasty garlic oil. You can do the same with shallots. So infuse that lovely shallot flavor into the oil, remove the flesh, use the oil, beautiful flavor, no FODMAPs. And in general, fats, because they're not carbohydrates, are not a source of FODMAPs. So butter is low enough in lactose to be incorporated in the low FODMAP diet. Those traces, again, are not a problem for most people. For sweeteners, agave is probably the highest in excess fructose and is a real trigger for many people. A small amount of honey, a teaspoon or two, is generally acceptable on the low FODMAP diet. If you were really drizzling a lot of honey on something, that might need to be modified. So if there's bread and there's a tablespoon of honey in a bread recipe, that's not going to be an issue for someone with a FODMAP sensitivity. If you were drizzling 2 tablespoons of honey on top of their oatmeal, it might be. There are some certification programs for low FODMAP foods. The FODMAP Friendly Certification, and then Monash University, which sort of came up with this dietary concept. So you'll see this on various food products. And as I mentioned, Campbell's Soup and Kellogg, Char, Enjoy Life Foods, a number of food products are getting certified. FODI Foods is a low FODMAP certified company, so all of their products are low FODMAP certified by Monash. So you will be seeing more and more of this. And these are the 2 certification labels that you would notice on commercial products. And then for additional resources, not to give myself a plug, but I do have some really great low FODMAP, easy to use, free resources that you can download to learn a little bit more about the low FODMAP diet. There's one called FODMAPs 101 that really runs through how FODMAPs can contribute to symptoms, where they're found, and just some general guidance around the low FODMAP FODMAP diet. Monash University also has a low FODMAP diet app, and that really is the best app for understanding what foods have FODMAPs and how to, what limitations are on those various foods to keep an individual at a low FODMAP threshold. So really it's a 3-phase diet, life-changing, I can tell you, life-changing for people with IBS. It is such rewarding work that I've been able to do. For years we really had nothing to tell patients, and now we can say, try this, there's a good chance, 3 out of 4 chance that you're gonna feel remarkably better. So you will definitely hear about this more and more, and I welcome any questions that you might have. Thank you for listening.